Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the 2020-21 school year Developing Healthy Kids series. This is our 9th year of Developing Healthy Kids, an initiative that is recognized throughout the county, if not the state, in mental health programming for our students, developed here with the Rockford Public Schools and presented at the Rockford Public Schools. Tonight's presentation will focus on mental health issues that are related to the pandemic. As you all know, our high school and middle school students have unique situations in which they must deal with the changes that have been caused and predicated on our pandemic that we're facing. Particularly at the secondary level, many of our students are participating in co-curricular activities, whether it be marching band, whether it be drama, whether it be choir, whether it be athletics, that is interrupting their lives, our students' lives. And this has an incredible impact on mental health for our students. I want to thank our mental health organizations in Kent County that include the Child Advocacy Network, the Mental Health Foundation of Kent County, the Kent County Health Department, County Health Department. I want to thank our Rockford Public Schools mental health experts that include our counselors, our social workers, our mental health liaisons, all of the individuals who work for the Rockford Public Schools who have a direct responsibility in mental health for our students. I believe that our parents and our middle and high school students are going to find, by participating in this program tonight, excellent suggestions on how to cope with and handle the stresses that are created by this pandemic. I want to thank the Rockford Education Foundation for their financial support of the Developing Healthy Kids series over the last many years. Their financial support has made a huge difference in the success of our programs. So thank you, REF. And I want to encourage our parents and our students to continue to participate in our future Developing Healthy Kids series throughout the 2020-21 school year. I hope that you all stay safe as we try to cope with and deal with and transcend this pandemic. Thank you.
Good evening, Rockford community. My name is Christy Young, and I am the video production and broadcasting instructor at Rockford High School in the Beyond the Rock program. Tonight, I will be moderating questions to our various presenters. Our goal this evening is to help provide insight, information, and encouragement to our community as we work through the challenges before us this year. To begin our presentation, we will start with our first presenter, Samantha Ackerman from the Children's Advocacy Center.
My name is Samantha Ackerman. I am the clinical supervisor at the Children's Advocacy Center of Kent County. We treat children who have endured child sexual abuse, and we treat them with an MDT approach. So we have police officers and CPS on our staff. We have forensic interviewers, and we have therapy services. So when a family has the experience of coming into the center, they don't have to go to several different places to have their child seen by many different people, having many different interviews. They just come to one place and get everything that they need.
Hi, I'm David Jangda. I'm the mental health liaison, mental health specialist for Rockford Public Schools. My background is mostly clinical. I've worked with children and adolescents for about 15 years clinically, which means I worked in residential units, psychiatric, inpatient, partial day programming, and outpatient care. After that, I worked within public schools, so Grand Rapids Public Schools, Forest Hills, and then currently in Rockford Public. And my main objective is to advocate for students and families and help them navigate mental health supports. And as a district employee, my role is to really support you guys as parents and whatever you guys need. So I see students wherever they're at. So if it's at home, if it's here at school, if it's within a clinical setting, my job is to focus on their care, safety, and make sure that we're navigating supports together to make sure that we're being proactive and getting our kids support.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Hoganson, and I'm the Director of Community Wellness at the Kent County Health Department. During this time of pandemic, COVID-19, I've also been assigned the responsibility of being the liaison between the Health Department and the schools of Kent County. So it's been my privilege to work closely with superintendents and other school administrators to make sure that we have excellent plans in place to keep people that work in the schools as well as all of the students as safe as possible during this time. And we have worked closely to monitor the situation within the schools, as well as to make sure that the schools have plans in place when there is an outbreak within the schools.
Hi, my name is Christy Buck, and I am the Executive Director of the Mental Health Foundation of West Michigan and the founder of Be Nice. It is a pleasure to be here for you all to gain a better understanding about some of the stressors, the anxiety, possible the onset of a mental health disorder in your kids and possibly in other family members. So hopefully we'll give you great information.
I'm Heather Slater. I'm currently the school psychologist for all of our 9th through 12th grade students. I cover the high school, freshman center, and River Valley Academy. This is my 17th year in the district, and over the years I've worked at several of our elementary buildings, as well as our transitional program for special education students up to age 26. COVID has presented many challenges for everyone, from adults to children, over the past year. These challenges can be financial, physical, and emotional. COVID has also presented some unique benefits. It's allowed us to have more time with our immediate family. It's encouraged people to learn to cook. It has helped people to make buying decisions more carefully and to consider saving when they're able to again. It's helped us to learn to be flexible. If you're a type A person like me, that one is more challenging, but I feel like I've improved with it through this whole thing. COVID has also helped us to slow down a little and live much more in the moment. One of the ways we can manage stress in this situation is to acknowledge the challenges, but also try to see some of the benefits. It also helps to think about the things you're most looking forward to when this is all over and keep those goals in mind. Connecting with your friends regularly through methods like phone calls, texts, and Zoom is important. Managing your diet and continuing to get regular exercise is also very important. One of the most important things is having grace for yourself and those around you. We're all going through this, and it's really hard. Be okay with doing your best, even if it isn't perfect. If you feel like you just can't cope anymore and a phone call with a friend is not going to do it, then please reach out for help. Contact your doctor's office to help you find the support you need as a parent. How well you're functioning is a major factor in how well your child is going to do throughout this year.
Hi, my name is Kate Miller, and I'm the school social worker here at Rockford High School. I have been a school social worker within the school system roughly 15 years, mostly secondary level. And I have to say it's been quite a year this year, but I continue to be impressed with the resiliency that our youth are showing in response to this ongoing pandemic. We have seen them demonstrate flexibility. We have seen them have a positive attitude to comply with the new expectations and rules that we put in place. In many ways, our youth have been more resilient than us adults that sometimes resist change because we're set in our ways. But I've thought more this year about how we have to be very mindful that we are all human. We are all going through a long-standing crisis, and many of us have now developed chronic stress. We all have limits, and our youth are starting to show that there is some stress that has become almost unmanageable for them. We're seeing that in changes with their behavior. We're seeing that through their attempts to regain control. And we've seen some students even resist wanting to come to school. What's most critical is that we are in tune as adults with the youth's emotional development, their social needs, and their psychological needs. The good thing is that although we cannot replace the social interactions that they would get with in-person instruction, there are strategies that we as adults can implement to help lessen the severe impact that the social isolation will have on our youth.
Hi, I'm Holly Normington. I'm a counselor at the Freshman Center here in Rockford. So we've been hearing the word over and over, unprecedented. This is very much a challenging, unprecedented year for students and families. And because I work at the Freshman Center, I just want to say that freshman year is typically a very challenging year. It's a transition year for freshmen because they're new at high school and they're learning the pacing of trimesters. There's a lot of required classes freshman year, and with required classes comes homework. So it is already a tough year, and with 2020-21 school year, we have even more high anxiety this year. You know, and kids are just, and families too, are dealing with all the changes in everything, the fear of the unknown. They're dealing with wearing masks for 6 hours a day. But I do have to say that the students in our district are doing a really good job with that. And that's because they have role models of their teachers wearing them all day. And so that really hasn't been a huge problem. But students are struggling with holding themselves accountable if they're in virtual or during remote. They're dealing with isolation from friends, a lot of disappointment and a sense of loss because their activities are canceled. And developmentally, they are at the stage where they really do need to connect with their activities, kind of figuring out who they are and where they're going. They need to connect with peers. And so, yes, it is such a difficult year. So as counselors, we really want to reinforce that students and parents really have more control during a year where they don't feel like they have a lot of control. They have control over how they're dealing with their stress and anxiety and how they manage it. And so part of that is helping them understand that and normalize getting help. So going towards support when they need it. Initiating contact with friends. Sometimes it's hard, especially for the more introverted student. It's hard to initiate that contact. But we tell students that you have to work on that. If you're feeling lonely, find a creative way to connect with peers. Maybe during a Google Meet, you can do an art project with a friend. Opening up to a trusted friend or an adult. It's super important to talk about how you're feeling when you have a lot of stress and anxiety. So we just want to make sure that you're reaching out for support because that's truly one of the most important things when dealing with a lot of pressure.
How important is self-care for students and parents, or any tips do you have for parents and community members on caring for the students during this time?
Self-care for students during this time is incredibly important. Everything is very different in their world. Everything's constantly changing. And so we need to honor what they're missing out on, but we also need to support them in knowing that things are going to be okay. And so the best way to help them with self-care right now is, while we're going to hear them out and have those relationships with children to be able to talk about what they're struggling with, it's also really helpful to reframe things, to be a positive influence, to hear what they're saying, but also not allow them to spiral downward and getting caught in thinking about all the things they are missing out on. So honoring those things, but then helping them reframe to move on. Remembering what self-care really is. Self-care can very easily become just letting ourselves do whatever feels good in the moment, when in reality, self-care can often be doing the difficult thing, which is following structure, following routine, keeping consistency in place. And especially as students get older and have more autonomy, it's a lot easier for caregivers, while they have their own stuff going on, to just let students take more of that responsibility on. And as things are constantly changing in the world around us, we need to be steady and consistent for our children all the way through. parents and caregivers really need to focus on that relationship they have with their child so that when things are difficult and students are struggling, they can already have that established relationship to come talk to their parents. So making sure you're working on the relationship with your child when things are good so that when they are struggling, you already have that stability to have that tough conversation about what's going on. It's also really important to focus on creating new routines. So everything is changing and we know that, but families working on developing a new normal and a new routine so that, again, students and kids can have an expectation about what's going to happen every day. That's going to create that structure and stability and that security, which makes dealing with the constant changes much easier.
What resources are out there from the Children's Advocacy Network during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, the CAC is still open, so the Advocacy Center is still open. We're still providing services. We are limiting the amount of people in the building, but still providing all of our services. So if you have a question or a concern, or there is something with child sexual abuse that comes up in the community, we're still available to provide all the resources. In addition, we have parent cafes going on right now, which is a virtual event where parents can get support with different topics on how to care for themselves and how to care for children during this. We also currently have a Zoom group happening for children on coping skills, which we are able to open up to anyone who wants to join. The best way to keep track of everything we have going on is to follow us on social media. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're constantly updating all those outlets with information, articles, tips, and all the parent cafe and Zoom group information so that people can join those events as well. So we're often asked about ages that are appropriate for services at the CAC. We are the Children's Advocacy Center. However, we serve children from 0 all the way up to 18. So we do provide services for older children as well. We have lots of teens who are currently in services. We do have resources to meet their needs. So even though it's the Children's Advocacy Center, it's children all the way up to age 18. So making sure that if you do need services, if you are a family who's experienced child sexual abuse, that you connect with us because we do have the ability to meet the needs of all survivors.
What resources are out there for parents if we need help navigating parenting during this very unique time?
As a parent, if you feel your child is in crisis, and what I mean by that is if you feel your child is unsafe, if you feel your child is not acting normal, and you feel like they're under a level of distress that you're highly concerned about, like their well-being. If that is the case, obviously if it's an emergency, you want to call 911 and get your child in care immediately. If you feel like it's not quite there, but you're getting there, the thing that we often will use is you can take your child, if they're safe to drive, down to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital to the ER. They're really good about triaging support, making sure a child is safe, getting mental health resources in place, and helping navigate moving forward. That is one option. If you feel like it's not quite there, but it's still like more like mild to moderate, one option is also Network 180, which is on Fuller Avenue. They deal with any level of mental health situation. They can help with Medicaid, or they can help if you're not insured at all, or if your insurance that you do have doesn't cover mental health. They do immediate. They have an access center to do immediate assessments and evaluations. You may wait in line, but they take it based on urgency. And from there, they can help, again, kind of triage supports anywhere in Kent County. My role in the district is to help you navigate crisis situations. So if you feel like there's something going on, my email address, my cell number is all available on our website. You can contact me directly and ask me questions. I do come to the home and see students, even if it's after school or weekends, whatever is the need of our kids. I will respond to make sure that you have those questions answered. Please feel free to call me and I can help talk through these options as well, so you know that you have that support.
How has access to mental wellness supports changed with the pandemic?
Obviously, a lot of providers have gone virtual, so it's good and bad. So I think some students feel comfortable with starting a therapy, like a therapeutic relationship via like an online platform, and because it helps break the ice, helps them get acclimated to counseling, and then before they go into a clinic setting, that can be like a benefit of it. On the other side of it, some students benefit from face-to-face interaction and being more personal. So that has been a little bit of a detriment to some of our students. So getting services right now, they're being provided. Most of them are virtual. Now, not all though. So some smaller offices are offering face-to-face. They're keeping the social distancing. They're using PPEs. They're using all the safety precautions right now. If it comes to more intensive support, so let's say a student needs intensive outpatient or even inpatient services, those are face-to-face, obviously. The evaluations to being in the hospital, they do require a negative COVID test most oftentimes, and they do expedite that process. So if you feel like your child is needing support, we can walk through that process and getting that COVID test, making sure it is negative, looking through it, the admission process, the assessment, and then looking at what level of care they may require. It's a little bit different, but they're still offering support. So I guess my point is, no matter what is going on, if you feel your child is in need, we will find a format, we will find a structure for them to get the support they need, no matter what. And if there's also home-based services for some families, a little bit different, and it depends on insurance. But there's a lot of resources still available, regardless of the pandemic.
Just confirming what I was told by a Kent County Health Department employee. Once we test positive for COVID and have isolated appropriately, we are considered immune and no longer need to be quarantined until 90 days after onset of symptoms.
There's not a lot of good news around COVID-19, and this is one of the good things that I get to report out on. When a person tests positive for COVID-19, they need to go through a 10-day isolation period, at least 10 days, where during which time they are infectious and could spread the virus to other people. However, once they have completed their period of isolation, and that means it is at least 10 days since the onset of symptoms or from the date that they took the test, and their other symptoms are slowly getting better, and they have been 24 hours fever-free, then that person is no longer infectious and they can return to normal activities. The good news is that the body responds to that infection by creating antibodies. And so a person is considered immune for at least 90 days from the time of their isolation period. For the next 90 days, they cannot catch it again. And so that means if they do have another exposure, they do not have to quarantine a second time.
Any information that you would like to share with families of high school students from a Kent County Health Department perspective?
Yeah, we have a lot of important guidance to give families, so I'm going to prioritize probably the top two. Number one, children generally fare very well if they become sick with COVID-19. Most often, their symptoms are mild, they do not need hospitalization, and most often they recover without any long-term consequences. However, the same kids that seem to be doing fine could also spread to other people. So especially as we are looking at the holiday time, it's very important that parents keep in mind that if their children are positive, and they might not even know it, they could pass the virus on to grandparents, elderly aunts and uncles, or even people that are immunosuppressed or have chronic illness. So it is a good time to consider keeping kids home. Keep kids in their own family units, just your family for the holiday time, so that the children who may feel fine and not be really showing any symptoms at all don't unknowingly carry the virus and infect other people.
And when you say families, are you talking your immediate family within the home or extended families?
Yes, I'm talking about keeping kids within their own household. So that would mean maybe for Thanksgiving and Christmas time, not getting together in large groups with extended family when there are children elementary age involved, because they could be spreading the virus to other people without knowing it.
Is there a long-term impact on students' overall mental health and well-being from COVID-19?
And I look at it this way, that no, there doesn't need to be. And how I know this is we begin to talk about anxiety, stress, emotions that COVID-19 is bringing about, and recognize, notice at the onset when someone is first struggling, there will not be effects necessarily. Gaining a better understanding of children's mental health is super important right now, and that is recognizing the fact that anxiety is a normal response right now to many different things that are going on in people's lives. It's noticing and recognizing the onset when these stressors and these things that are bringing about anxiety are actually having an effect on my child's mental health. And that is how they're thinking, how they're acting, and how they're feeling. And what I'm looking for is signs and symptoms that are lasting for 2 weeks or longer, a marked change in their behavior that is bringing about possibly not wanting to go to school, not wanting to do their homework, not carrying out daily activities, and not engaging in satisfying relationships. If I can measure my child's behavior, their thoughts, actions, and feelings around those 3 things, it may be the start of when I need to invite myself to have a conversation with them. I'm teaching the Be Nice Action Plan because I'm a believer in 4 steps to getting help when someone might be struggling at the onset of a mental health disorder. The 3rd step in the Be Nice Action Plan is to challenge. And the challenge is challenging myself to possibly seek out resources for my child to get additional assistance. And that means a counselor, possibly a teacher, and then ultimately recognizing if I'm in a crisis situation. Crisis situations are handled a little bit differently, and this takes a parent to be able to recognize, is this a situation where my child is in harm to themselves or to others? That takes a lot to recognize these, but these are part of the things that having a conversation and opening up a dialogue with your child is really super important.
What can I do if I feel my child is in crisis? What's the mental health perspective on this?
To recognize when your child is in a crisis is very, very important. Crisis situations are serious because kids are really impulsive. And for children, technologically, a part of their brain hasn't totally developed yet, and that is part of the brain that is in charge of impulsivity. So when they're in a crisis, and a crisis situation for them could be these major stressors that are going on that are bringing about fits of anger, crying, thoughts of hopelessness, worthlessness, thinking that life would be better off without them. These are serious, and these are serious conversations that we need to have with our children. And when we're recognizing these signs and symptoms in a child, and they're possibly talking about not valuing life, not having a purpose, that no one would care if they were around or not, it's important that we bring up, are you having thoughts of harming yourself, of taking your life? These questions are pretty important, and many times we don't want to ask that because we're afraid of what the answer is. And the importance is that recognizing, again, the children can be very impulsive. And so having conversations when our kids are in the crisis and bringing them down to this realistic picture of what is going on, and then accessing help and treatment. Talking to them, open communication, and asking them how their thoughts and feelings are affecting what they're doing. There's a brochure, and it's available on the Mental Health Foundation website, and I'm sure they'll make it available to you all tonight. But this is how to get help when a child or yourself or anyone is in a mental health crisis. And on the brochure, it gives you a great guide of what to do. The red line is intended for if somebody needs emergency assistance. And this was when the person is in danger of hurting themselves or other, and they're making serious threats. Extremely agitated. First time experiencing severe psychiatric symptoms. Self-harm has occurred. Experiencing suicidal thoughts with a plan or intent to act. The individual could be intoxicated or impaired from substance use. That would be really important that you call 911. And when you're calling 911, it's really important that you identify with the people on the phone that your loved one is in an emergency state and that they are struggling with possibly a mental health disorder. Very important. Do you have time to call for guidance and support? And this is when you need to call a helpline. So through Network 180, there is a crisis helpline. And in addition, there's a mobile crisis unit for adolescents. 336-3909 is the phone number to Network 180. At that point, you can identify that it's a child that is in a crisis. And then what happens is they connect you with a clinician for that child to talk to at that point. The amazing thing about it is they're talking to a professional right then. And that professional is able to assess the situation, if they should come to your home and help out in that situation, if the person is in harm to themselves or others. It's super important to know these resources. In addition, when you're taking action, and especially for anybody, you need to understand that insurance is an important thing to know. And so become familiar with your insurance carrier and their assistance with mental health services and where you can access help and treatment. In addition, there are helplines both set up with Forest View Hospital and Pine Rest. And both of them have 24/7 access phone numbers for you to get, again, a conversation and dialogue with someone. I would have those phone numbers handy and make sure that this brochure is something that you print out.
How has COVID-19 impacted child and adolescent social emotional health?
The effect is dependent on age and personal characteristics, as well as things like their support system at home and resources available to them. I've heard some of our students with autism say it's been good. They're not pushed to be social as much, and they are able to be in only familiar places that are comfortable for them. I had one person with autism tell me back in March that this was going to be fine because he's already a pro at social distancing. For many of our students, though, it's been very hard. Younger children need social interaction and play to develop properly. Older students are at a time in their development where their brains are wired to want to be with their peers and to not want to be at home with their parents. Being in a situation where they're getting the exact opposite is hard for everyone. Children are resilient, though, and they will be able to recover from this. It's important to keep their social emotional health as a priority. It's easy to think they're okay when they may not be. Talk to them, but more important, listen to them, and not just to their words, but also listen to their actions. Kids talk to us through behavior. If you're seeing a lot of things that seem really out of the ordinary for your child, reach out to us or to their doctor for help. Not all the impacts of COVID are negative, though. Even in this area, our children are getting a really good opportunity to learn flexibility. They are also more comfortable than many adults are with having their social interactions be digital. For the social butterfly, try to find ways for them to interact with their friends from a distance and recognize that they may need more time with their phone or tablet to be able to interact with their friends now because they can't just go hang out. Time on a phone or tablet talking with a friend is not the same thing as screen time. Let them have this time within reason. If your child is more introverted, let them enjoy this time. While some social interaction is important, their need for it may not be as great as yours. If they're happy, then trust that they're getting what they need. For some children, the situation is much more difficult and comes down to basic needs. If you are in a situation where you do not have access to adequate food or housing, this can be a serious impact on the emotional health of you and your child. If this is the case, immediately seek help and reach out to us or other community agencies. Don't try to go it alone.
How has access to mental wellness supports changed with the pandemic?
Access to mental wellness supports has been an important issue throughout the pandemic. During the first few weeks, I had conversations with several families at the elementary level who had run out of their child's medication and couldn't get more because they couldn't get in to see their doctor. Depending on what the medication was treating, this made attending school remotely and being able to sit and get work done very challenging for some students and very stressful for their parents. The most important thing for school in these situations was communication with the child's teacher. If your child is struggling with something, let the teacher know. They may not be able to fix it, but it will help them to better support your child's academic needs if they know about it. This particular issue fortunately resolved for most by April. Now we have many offices providing telehealth appointments for therapy as well as more minor medical needs. It took everyone a little bit of time to adjust to providing and receiving service this way, but overall the results have been positive. For some families with transportation issues or scheduling issues, the availability of telehealth therapy appointments has actually increased their access to support. Some adolescents are also much more comfortable with telehealth, so having that as an option may make them more willing to participate in therapy and may help them to make better or faster progress. I find that one of the challenges for parents is knowing where to go to access support. That was a primary challenge before the pandemic, and it still is now. If you need help finding someone to provide mental health support, please reach out to your school or your child's doctor. While we can't provide clinical therapy in the school setting, we can provide some short-term support, and we know the resources in the community well, and we can help you find what you need.
As parents, how can we support and help our son work through isolation?
Social interaction outside of the home, apart from interaction with their family, is a critical aspect of our youth's development. Interacting with those outside the home helps our youth to develop a sense of identity, to develop a sense of belonging, and to practice very necessary social skills. When they're having those social interactions with those around them, the brain actually releases feel-good chemicals. And there are 4 feel-good chemicals that really are produced when we interact with other people. And those are serotonin. Serotonin is produced when we feel more respected, when we feel validated, when we feel recognized for our efforts. Dopamine is that feeling of happiness that we get when we anticipate that something good is going to happen, when we're looking forward to a trip or looking forward to seeing our friends. Oxytocin is the love and bonding chemical, and that is the chemical that is released, the feel-good chemical, when we get a hug from somebody else, when we feel bonded to somebody else and connected. And endorphins are the pain-masking chemical that we get. It's that high when we have physical activity. When we're under chronic stress, and in particular our youth, when they are socially isolated, there is a significant decline in these feel-good chemicals. So we really, as adults, need to look at, although we cannot have our students here in person at this time consistently, there are specific strategies that we as adults can implement with our children, with our youth, to really help produce those, to increase those feel-good chemicals. So I want to give you just a couple of helpful hints regarding how you can do that. The most important, if there's any takeaway today that I can share with you, it's that there's a term called emotional attunement. And emotional attunement is, are you able as a parent to think about your child's thoughts, recognize their feelings, respond to their emotional needs, validate them. So ways that we can do that with our children is to find quiet times where we make eye contact with our children, where there aren't any other distractions around us, where we say, how are you feeling today? So frequent check-ins are important. Don't try to assume that you know how they feel. Let them lead the discussion. And wait for the right opportunity for them to engage. Youth are used to coping by being with their peers. It's not going to come naturally to them to want to necessarily talk to their parents, but by letting them take the lead, that's critical. And modeling emotional health yourself by saying, I'm really feeling down today, or I'm having a stressful day. I'm really having a hard time with all these changes. How are you feeling? And then working with them to maybe create a plan like, well, what's something fun we can do today to get some exercise, or to laugh, or to connect with other family members, or to connect with your friends virtually. But really, emotional attunement will help a child feel secure. It will reduce anxiety and decrease the chances of depression and those feelings of isolation, because they're connected to you in an emotional way. So although you cannot replace the peer interactions, you can continue to support their emotional and their social development.
How has technology impacted learning in a good or a bad way? Please provide information regarding the concern for the amount of screen time.
As a parent myself, it was a concern that my daughter was spending 5-6 hours in her room on her laptop for remote instruction. However, when I did some research, and I realized that there are different types of screen time. So think of it in terms of active versus passive screen time. do not consider live instruction or even social interaction on their tablets or as screen time as being what we typically think of as passive screen time. It's not going to have a negative impact on their development. What is negative and harmful to their development is when they're passively looking at a screen. So just passively watching videos where they're not actively engaged. That could be harmful to their development because that then encourages social isolation. They're not participating in an activity. So I would not, as a parent, consider live instruction or any social interaction involving screen time to be a negative in any way. All of the previous information that's been shared with us over the last few decades has taught parents to limit screen time, and it has given us the message that it's all bad, but that is not necessarily the case. What's more important is that you find a balance for your child. Consider their physical needs. Make sure they're getting 10 to 15 minutes of outdoor time where they're getting sunlight, because that will produce those feel-good hormones. Brief periods of exercise, walking the dog, going on the trampoline, walking to the store, whatever that may be. So think in terms of balance. And I would kind of just say that all of those rules about screen time are out the window right now. We are very blessed, very fortunate that although this pandemic has been a very, very stressful time for all of us, there is a silver lining. And that silver lining is that we have virtual formats so that our students can stay connected with their teachers and with their friends and with their community. So the last thing I want to say about that is have compassion for yourself, throw the guilt out the window, have compassion for your children, and just continue to validate their feelings, to be a consistent source of support for them, and constantly checking in with them and asking them what their needs are and how they're feeling that day. That is the most important thing that you can do for your child at this time. Keep them engaged and keep them participating in any type of interaction with you, with their peers, with their family members.
What can we do as parents to support learning and potential changes with our child's education?
So parents can do a lot to help support their students' learning, especially if there's potential changes in a child's education. They can do a lot at home, like reinforcing daily routines and schedules, reinforcing an organizational system that works for the student, whether it's a traditional planner or just making lists or using Schoology, middle school through high school. There's calendars in there, but making sure they organize what they have to do and when they have to do it and stick to a plan. Parents can encourage strong study habits, helping students make that plan and complete their assignments early. Study with a friend, sometimes talking it through, and maybe you use a Google Meet with a friend to kind of study for a test. It really can make a difference. Also, help your student change their thinking about what kind of student they are. So some students are very independent in some of these things, and some students need a little extra help in that way. And so it's really important as parents we don't compare your student to siblings, and helping them understand you're not dumb, you can do this, you have control over changing some of your study habits and doing things a little bit differently, because we all have strengths and weaknesses. So use your strengths to kind of help you overcome some of the weaknesses. Get comfortable with what your weaknesses are. Like I said, we all have them. I think when you're comfortable with them and you state them to yourself, you can work on a plan to make things a little bit different. But as parents, we really want to make sure that we're not demanding these things of our students, but sitting down with them, not fighting with them, but sitting down with them, having a conversation with what their strengths are, what maybe they need to work on, and coming up with a plan that'll help, because it's a process and it takes time. So those are some of the things you can do at home, but you can also reach out for support. So again, as parents, sometimes, again, it's one of the most difficult jobs we have. And we can't do it alone. We do have to reach out. So you can reach out to teachers, administrators, or counselors, depending on if the change in the education or the challenge has to do with academic concerns, social emotional concerns, or even behavioral concerns. We're all here as confidants. We can keep things confidential, and we will keep it non-judgmental, but we can offer you resources both within the school and outside of the school. So within the school, we might be able to offer a different course for your student, or a support course, such as we have some classes called peer mentor classes that could be helpful. Counseling support. We have a lot of student helpers. So we have student tutors through the National Honor Society. We also have peer listeners. There's things that we can do to help your student within the school. But we could also offer resources and numbers for outside agencies that could help as well.
Are there any other strategies that one can do to alleviate stress and anxiety?
As a counselor, I'm a strong proponent of mindfulness. So I think we've been hearing more about mindfulness in our community, in our schools, but what is it? Mindfulness is learning to stay in the present moment intentionally or on purpose. It's slowing our thoughts down, learning to focus on our breath and to slow our breathing down. It's learning to relax your body, your mind, and your heart, or your emotions. So mindfulness is something that's inexpensive, it's practical, and it works. It does take practice, but it's something that helps us to learn how to change self-judgment or self-criticism to self-compassion. And that's something that I know freshmen need to work on. I think through 6th through 12th grade especially, and maybe all of us need to work on being less critical of ourselves. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We expect ourselves to do a lot, and we need to kind of reframe our thinking, change our thoughts to be more compassionate so we can function at our best. And I want to highlight Grand Rapids Center for Mindfulness. We have an amazing community of mindfulness practices right here, practitioners right here in Grand Rapids, as well as different agencies that can help. But Grand Rapids Center for Mindfulness, they do a lot for mindfulness for all ages of kids. I believe ages 5 through 12th graders, for parents, for just families and community members. So reach out to Grand Rapids Center for Mindfulness. I also want to highlight some of the free apps that students can get, and there's a lot of them out there right now. There's Calm and Headspace. There's one called Insight Timer for adults. It's more of an adult one. But the one I like the best for middle school through high school is called Stop, Breathe, Think. It's a free app, and I use it a lot with my students. Again, at the Freshman Center, there can be a lot of pressure because of all the required classes and homework. So sometimes students will come in really upset about maybe failing a test, or they had an argument with a parent or a friend, and they have very high emotion. So typically, I'll just have them relax for a minute, and to help them calm down, I'll ask them if they've ever heard of Stop, Breathe, and Think, and then show it to them on my phone. And the really cool thing about this app is the first thing it does is it has you identify your emotions or how you're feeling, because with high emotion and high anxiety, sometimes we're really confused about how we feel. We're really set in the fight, flight, or freeze mode, and our brain's not functioning at its best. So if we can identify how we're feeling, and the app has all kinds of really awesome feeling words, students choose 5 of them, and then they see them right in front of them in black and white. This is how I'm feeling. And that right there kind of helps them calm down a little bit. If they know how they're feeling, Then we can talk about why they're feeling that way. And then from those emotions, it will give them 2 practices that are brief, between 5 and 9 minutes, and they can choose which one they want, and it's really what they need to hear right in that moment. It really works every time, and mindfulness teaches kids to self-regulate and to learn to calm themselves down a little bit. So just to kind of highlight it even more, I'd like to do a mindfulness practice right now. So this is called home, mind, body, heart. So with mindfulness, you want to just take a moment to get comfortable in your chair, to really settle your feet on the ground, to sit up nice and straight but relaxed. Take a moment to breathe and let go of your thoughts. Make room to focus on your breath. Breathe in and out to settle in this moment. Let your eyes close or set your gaze down. Set an intention for yourself. An intention is something you may need right now. Maybe it's the word peace or stillness. It could be a person you've been thinking about, or it could be you because it's you that needs a reset or a renewal. Say your intention to yourself as you breathe in. And exhale any thoughts that aren't supporting you in this moment. Breathe your intention in and exhale unwanted thoughts out. Ground yourself in this moment. Be mindful of your strengths. You are enough, and you're just as you should be. Keep your breath even and slow. Take a moment to relax your spine. Keep your shoulders even. Relax your feet, your calves. Let the tension go from your legs. Relax your stomach, your back. Let your shoulders and neck relax. Release your jaw. Let the tension in your head disappear while keeping your breath even and long. Go back to your breath when you need to. Your breath is your lifeline. It's always with you. Breathe in your intention and let any pain, inner or outer, go. Home. We are all at home more, and we can have more acceptance of this if we remember home is where your heart is. What is home to you? Home is your happy place, your space of security or refuge. Home is where your people are, the ones who support you to be your unique self, with all of your strengths and idiosyncrasies. Home is your space without judgment. Keep working on the feeling of being at home. Be your authentic self. There is no one else just like you. The world needs you just as you are. Breathe your intention in and breathe out. Mind. Empty your mind. Give your mind a break from the to-do list. When a thought comes to you, notice it without judging and go back to your breath. Focus on your breath. When do you feel settled in your mind? Maybe it's when you are content. When we practice self-compassion, we are more content. Our thoughts affect how we feel, and our feelings affect our actions. Reframe our thinking from self-judgment to self-compassion. That's the key to a content mind. Breathe in and out. Body. How do you care for your body, your temple? What is your intention when taking care of how you feel physically? Maybe it's adding a day of movement, maybe a new activity, or listening to what your body needs. Maybe it's better nutrition, drinking more water, or just rest. Caring for your body is caring for you. The world needs you and your body needs you to care for it. Breathe in and out. Heart. What's the intention of your heart? Are you nourishing your heart, listening to and being open to your heart? What inspires you? Creating art, mindfulness, taking walks in nature, listening to music, sports, feeling gratitude for all that you have. Pay attention to feeding your heart. Let your heart shine both in towards yourself and out towards others. Compassion and kindness is how your heart communicates to yourself and to others. Breathe in and out. Keep breathing goodness, love, and peace into your heart. Understand and accept yourself today and always. And Mother Teresa says, yesterday is gone, tomorrow has not come yet. We only have today. Let us begin.
That brings us to a close here tonight for Developing Healthy Kids. We truly hope that this presentation was beneficial to you and your families. On behalf of the Rockford Public Schools, we want you to know that we care for your children and we want what is best for their health and the health of your families. We truly are in this together, and we appreciate you trusting our district with your most prized possessions. May you have a very safe and blessed holiday.